I think we're not getting the true story.
It's a very simple idea, but give Melbourne back to the people.
So nobody wants to be a small business owner anymore.
But the small business, the vibrant heart of Melbourne, is at risk.
So I think we need to let the people loose. They seem to be in the face of everything that we touch and do these days. The brand is the people, but they're now, rejigging how the city works.
But the commercial centre of Melbourne is no longer the if you like, the major brand.
I know we need regulation, but there's a time when you kill off an initiative with regulation. Welcome back to Brandr. Today we're going to be talking about a city brand, our home city, Melbourne. And I'd like to welcome our guest today, George Christopoulos, who is a passionate Melbournian. Why?
Well, apart from being born and raised in the city and having businesses for over 40 years in and around the city, the people of Melbourne are really what excites me and is what has made it special for me over all this time.
Tell us a bit more about your career, George. You've got a very, very diverse career, starting in, as the son of an immigrant in business, goes through sport, food, the food business, hospitality, property development. Is there anything you haven't done? Where would you start? Just give us a bit of a history, if you like.
Well, a lot of it, I guess, is part of the opportunity that the city of Melbourne offers. But my parents came here from war-torn Greece. They actually met in Innisfail in Queensland and married there, and then had various seasonal jobs until they found the factory set up in Port Melbourne being somewhere where they can get a bit of permanency. But they quickly became entrepreneurial, and my parents had a little mini supermarket. Then my father took on a second job in learning the real estate game and helped a lot of incoming Greek migrants who were coming in the 60s to make their home here. He helped them settle and find properties for them, worked a lot with the local church and the local community, and built a brand, I guess, of his own in and around the Greek community of Melbourne, which I grew up in. And consequently, I started playing football, soccer, and ended with one of Melbourne's biggest clubs, South Melbourne, again having a Greek connection there, and played for Australia at a very young age, one of the youngest Socceroos at age 17, which, funnily enough, my first game was against Greece here at Olympic Park in Melbourne. And that took me on a journey for quite a few years, playing professionally in England, in Greece, a lot of games with the Australian team, but finished fairly early. My career only went to age 24 due to injury. And then I had to get into real estate, which was an office that my father was running at the time, but then was offered a scholarship to go to the AIS in Canberra, which was the original intake in 1981. And I spent 4 years there, and also doing an inaugural course in sports marketing, where my life took on another journey because I fell in love with the whole idea of being involved in marketing events, and ended up doing the opening of the Olympic Stadium in Sydney in 1999, where I came up with an idea where we brought the FIFA World Team to play Australia, brought back in excess after the death of Michael Hutchence. We had a guest artist that the whole world was looking forward to who it would be, and it was Terence Trent D'Arby. And we filled the stadium, and it was a good way of launching Sydney 2000 a year before it was in.
So when you say, going back to Melbourne, what we're talking about, the idea that just occurred to me when we're talking there, George, Port Melbourne, when people came in the boats and the ships, they'd come down to Port Melbourne, and that was the start of community, because and people from Australia would travel to Europe and the world through Port Melbourne. The airports and flying was not sort of the way to go in those days. So that idea of community on board ship to Port Melbourne, and from Port Melbourne, so many people moved into Port Melbourne and lived in Port Melbourne when Melbourne as a community of internationals was starting to change.
Yes, and I guess you have a journey of 30-odd days on a ship. not really knowing what you're coming to. And a lot of people settled just in the surrounding area because there was a fear of going too far, right? Maybe you needed to get back on a ship to go home.
Melbourne is really about the people, and I totally agree with that idea. Let's talk about the names, not necessarily business names, but people. There have been families, there have been individuals. There's names that have made Melbourne world famous in every industry, whether you're talking about, casinos, restaurants, supermarkets,
business,
department
retailers.
stores, retail. What are the names that come to mind that are associated with the brand Melbourne that really have made it great?
Well, growing up, I think you don't take too much notice of it, but you drift into places like Myer is an obvious one, with the Christmas window, and I remember the food hall just being an obvious go-to each time. And as you get older, David Jones had the oyster bar, which you could go on a date with. And the supermarkets obviously are big, but the car companies in the old days, Greeks loved their Valiants from Chrysler.
Kevin Dennis.
But Holden and Ford were big. Yeah, Kevin Dennis, watching new faces on TV, Bert Newton, Don Lane, all those things. I think they're all representative of great brands of Melbourne, and they're actually people. The brand is the person.
I think in that instance there, George and Roy, you could actually relate to them. They were human. There was a sense of obviously respect, but also there was closeness that actually felt part of the infrastructure of what Melbourne. They were also great ambassadors for Melbourne because they would be connected with people, particularly the big retailers and business guys would be connected with global people as well. They'd bring their products and brands in, but
That's
they
true.
still represented a persona, a personality, which is now probably more represented in the various places you can go to, the laneways and things where there's more personality.
Yes.
It's changed. Everything has changed.
Yes, and we achieved at a very high end. If you think of people like Ron Walker and what's happened down at Crown, and politicians have had a little bit to do with it as well. But that's where we've had a bit of a wave of ups and downs. I think where we've been knocked around a bit by some of the policies that we now are confronted with, and the way that we look at the city and who is benefiting from what policies.
So let's talk about the brand again. In terms of politics, very, very volatile. Obviously, people come in, they get voted in, they get in for a while, and then they go. So there's not really continuity, especially in our political system. But a brand is forever. Right? There are famous brands that are hundreds of years old. Who looks after the brand Melbourne?
Well,
who's the guy or the people that actually, I don't mean look at it, I don't mean put up signage, but who are the ones that say, look, we're the ones that actually run Melbourne, the brand Melbourne? How does that work?
Well, the custodians are obviously the city, the Lord Mayor and the councillors, but we've divided the city into precincts too. So we've got Chinatown, where there's a Greek precinct in Lonsdale Street, which unfortunately has lost its way a bit, and a lot of that has moved to Oakley. We are now getting a very strong student Asian influence up and down Swanston Street. So the brand is the people, but they're now, I guess, rejigging how the city works, what fits in where. Our corporate giants were very much part of it. BHP, NAB, had
ICI,
headquarters here,
which is
Rio
now Orica.
Tinto. I think part of why we've been such a successful city is we've had a little bit of everything. And we've been able to also reach out to the world market. So Melbourne's always been of interest, and particularly during the age of the major events being cemented in this city. The tennis, the Formula One, Melbourne Cup. They are now big calendar items on the world scene. So that creates an international profile, which forces us to behave and act like good hosts, because there's a reason for us to do well in inviting these people over. But our day-to-day activity, I think, is where it's changed a lot.
Well, I think that, George, is to do with the change of after COVID, of course, but the commercial centre of Melbourne is no longer the if you like, the major brand. It's actually the events, the activity, as you mentioned before. That's the thing that's more, because that's more global, it's more international, more people, it's a greater diversity. And when you think about the fact that Melbourne's population is going to go perhaps the greatest city in Australia in terms of numbers, this is also going to create further diversity and further spread of something which is just not, you can't sum it up in one logo or anything like that. You've got to have a different story.
Yes, I agree, and I've been part of a gathering of people to look at the future of Melbourne going through to 250, and we're talking about a population growth of up to 8-9 million people in such a short space of time. So we need to really get our act together as far as understanding where it's all going and how we harness it to get the best out of what we have.
Could you say there, George, there maybe needs to be a new wind come through, a new breeze, a change of attitude? There's a lot of people that have been in positions there for a long time. Is it about youthfulness? Is it about the change of the dynamic? What are the important things that people and communities value nowadays, beyond just transport, connectivity, etc.? What are the other things that draw you here? I mean, I think a great example was the AC/DC concert at Federation Square, where there was just a call out from the Fed Square organisation map, and people just arrived, and you can look at it on the YouTubes, etc. And then there was that huge Greek swell. Now, I think one of the most memorable moments that have happened in 2025 in Melbourne will be regarded that concert. Now, that was just an idea that just came to life, very much community, very relaxed, but very joyous.
Yes.
No problems.
You're referring to the bagpipes.
Yes, the bagpipes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but once again, that has to do with tradition and our migration policy and a band that's now 50 years old and still going. So they're a great example of an Australian brand that's transcended time and international prowess, right? You're not going to get too many of those going forward, in my opinion, but we're facing different times with the whole digital age. Young people are thinking differently. We've got massive productivity issues, in my opinion, and we're sitting on the edge of Asia, which their productivity levels and their work ethic is far higher than ours, and with not a lot of expectation that the government's going to be there holding your hand. So I think we need to let the people loose. We need to move government away from a lot of what's happening day to day. They seem to be in the face of everything that we touch and do these days, and that will help grow more innovation, more unity, more individualism, and give people a sense of purpose. I think if we look at some of the crime activity and other things like that are around, a lot of it is, well, where is the sense of purpose? What am I getting out of being a good citizen, having a good job, having a dream? Right?
Well, in the old days, of course, when business was smaller, and I'm in small business, we're all in small business, it was about that sense of authenticity. It was actually, as you say, having a purpose, having a mission, something that people could believe in, that people were actually also walking their talk. There's a lot of talk, but not a lot of walking, in my view, here in this city. And we need to get back to people who essentially can be regarded as examples of great business practice, which then brings people in, brings income in, people travel in to come to the city to do these sort of things. But when it's all anonymous and just an overarching brand feeling, I think there's a lot of issue with the mystique of Melbourne and the reality of Melbourne, like mind time and real time. There's a big gap there.
And in that, go and have a look at the markets. You can talk firsthand about how Melbourne is synonymous with markets, which is quite unusual for a Western city.
Yeah, well, the history of Queen Victoria Market is amazing, and it's one of the biggest markets in the world in actual size and area. Still owned by the city, but going through an enormous change, mainly because we've got a population change. The original markets were just groups of farmers coming down horse and cart in an open shed, selling their potatoes or carrots or whatever it was. And then when refrigeration came into being, we set up the dairy hall. So things like milk and cheese and whatever else came across. But we still have a disadvantage that these sheds are open, and the modern day world demands air-conditioned comfort, cleanliness. We've really got to move with the time. So in many ways, it's very hard for Queen Victoria Market to go the next level. The other thing is we live in a 24-hour world, particularly down at that end of town where you've got universities, hospitals, a lot of student activity, and the market trading hours are just not fitting in with where the people are and what they want.
Well, I think on that, George, I love that word you just brought in, dreams. The dreams of perhaps a lot of the original storeholders there was to create, a lifestyle for their family. They start off with one barrow and they go bigger and bigger. But there's also a time when that dream, the reality is there, but then you need another dream on top of that to actually, and that requires the shift. So I think that's probably also where the resistance is, that we've got to here. We don't need to why do we need to change? But in actual fact, the city itself is changing. Yeah. Community, as you just said, the requirements of legal and statutory requirements of food, but also what people want. It is a 24-hour city now.
Correct.
You can't go. You can't go in Melbourne and say get a meal at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's not possible.
No, particularly post-COVID.
Yeah.
Also, with our population now being, very much more Asian than it was in the past, that's what they do. Asian cultures, the market is central to it. I don't know, we have a company in Vietnam, and you shop in the wet market, you shop in the local...
shop on the street.
On the street, exactly, all night, all day. So sometimes I feel like, I know we need regulation, I know we need food safety and all that, but there's a time when you kill off an initiative and innovation with regulation. And we've got to maybe think about, Melbourne for the future rather than the past. So what does the future look like? I mean, is Melbourne, we think it's sort of a reasonably prominent international city. Where does Melbourne go to from here? I know you've been part of sport more so than many other things, but what else is Melbourne famous for, and what will the future look like for Brand Melbourne?
Well, we've got to ask the question of our young people. If we're producing great minds, but the opportunity for them to stay here is not there, well, then you're just going to get a brain drain. This infatuation with welfare and how government wants to just be involved in everything is, I think, a real killer for the city and the country. We've got to be more positive about work and productivity and innovation and opportunity. I think it's a great thing that we're getting a big Asian influx, because they bring with them a sense of work ethic and innovation. You just have to go up Swanston Street and see the neon signs and the types of businesses and young people everywhere.
Also, George, working with young Asian people, which I do, it's extraordinary. Just commitment. They have a completely different vibe.
Yeah.
And I find it very, very empowering and very positive on the human nature of doing something better.
So I want to touch on sport, major sport events. You've had a lot of experience in that yourself, having played, soccer and being part of so many events. So what are the major events that make Melbourne or put Melbourne on the global stage? So just if you guys, we know the obvious ones, but what are the ones that really stand out that bring people to Melbourne?
The one that I'm hearing brings the most economic benefit is the Comedy Festival. I'm not sure if that's true, but it's mainly because it runs for a month. Yeah. And it's decentralised. It's not in one venue like you'd have the tennis. Yep. It's in all, and I love that model because every bar, pub, corner business can be part of the Comedy Festival. Now, comedy is also there's not a lot of baggage with it. There's not a crew of 10 people. There's not a band of 50 people. It's often just one person rolling up in a room with a microphone.
No H&S.
Yeah, so it's
and that's true of Melbourne, isn't it? I mean,
So I think if we look at that model, which I think can be expanded into other ways. It's probably cheaper to run. More people have access, and more people are involved.
The other thing on that, George, is because of the city's infrastructure, the tramways and things, you can get to these places quite easily. Just jump a tram, go X, Y, Z, which takes us to the other point of Melbourne expanding. I mean, we've got, we've got West Melbourne, we've got North Melbourne, we've got, the South Yarra, they've got the Docklands, we've got these precincts, which are all part of. I mean, Melbourne is all part of that. There seems to be there's almost a donut here with the centre part of Melbourne, but there's this outer ring which doesn't really get recognised, and there's a lot of community out there. And when we work in Kensington. Mm-hmm. Now it's becoming a great new hub, and there's a precinct there.
I'm glad I hadn't prompted you at all on that answer, and I'm so glad you said the comedy festival, because my thesis here is that we all know the F1, and, the Australian Open or whatever, and I'm a marketing guy, so I'll declare that I know how this works. You pump enough money and people will go anywhere.
Correct.
But your point is very well taken with the comedy festival, because F1, pretty much, they're in and out and they're all gone in a week. It's a temporary injection, which probably most Melbournians would say, look, it's actually a disruption factor.
Yeah.
They do put money into hotels and so forth.
Yeah.
Australian Open probably lasts 2 or 3 weeks, and to a degree you get a short-term, lift. Mm. But there's nothing sustainable in that. Mm-hmm. The people that come, the performers in the comedy festival, because I was in Edinburgh a couple of years ago, they were all in Edinburgh at the Fringe only a few weeks before. Yeah. And they had all ads up saying, see you in Melbourne.
Yeah. No, we do get the quality. It's a quality event.
It's a quality event. Yeah. But so, marketing guy says there's 365 days in a year. If you're only spending marketing dollars in 20 of them, what about the other 345 days? Because that's the way to get the city going again, to get Melbourne. So what else can we do other than comedy?
Well, anything that's going to engage a lot of the smaller businesses. I mean, look, I have a thing about government sponsorship of the big name sports and events. I think they should stop it. Government supporting AFL is a joke. Yeah. Tennis and Formula One and Melbourne Cup are all doing this. They create more activity with hospitality, bring in guest chefs, run bands, music, all for free, and keep the crowd on their doorstep longer than they should outside of the event, which harms all the people that are paying rent in the city or surrounding areas where normally they would spill out of. Another example of bad policy, running a public holiday on the Friday before the grand final. The culture, and people will remember, the culture of the Friday night pubs of football supporters that have either arrived in the city from interstate, or you're a Collingwood or Richmond fan or whatever, that Friday night was a booming Friday night. And it's now dead, because on Friday it's a holiday. They run some sort of parade. People don't care. Half of them go away for the long weekend. And you've destroyed culture that we had as an AFL build-up, right? Yeah. I mean, I had pubs during that era, and didn't matter who was playing. Everybody was talking football in a bar, in a pub. Yeah. So we've got to be careful that we're not sanitising things. We're not doing things for political gain. I mean, that was just a stunt to win people over. Give them another holiday. We already set the pace for having holidays for sporting events, right? And they should measure and tell the community how much it costs to shut business down on a public holiday. And no one's talking about it. I'm really disappointed with a lot of the business associations and groups that really don't defend this issue. And it's normally they're defending big business, right? I mean, the supermarkets and the shopping centres and these guys don't need help in this area. But small business that's battling alone, they can't even afford to pay for a membership in a business association. is suffering.
It's kind of crazy if you think about Australia being such a small country relatively in population terms, that so much of the power is concentrated in such a small number of companies. Before we came on air, you were talking about how the markets are struggling, but everybody loves markets. So as an operator, you're much more of a doer than a talker, although you have a very strong
He's
opinion.
done a pretty good job today, Roy.
No, he has, but I respect your ability to do stuff. And just comment from you on the infrastructure and the facilities we have in Melbourne are pretty damn good. If you look at the stadiums, the public transport, population concentration, a lot of immigration, a lot of, ethnic groups and whatever. So Melbourne's got the capability to do much more. Would you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah. And what particular parts of that would be, like tomorrow we could start saying, look, we start with these things we've got. What have we got that we could already work with?
Well, first thing is, I'll leave housing aside because that's another big issue, but we have now got a lot of empty buildings, quality buildings, because of the changing policy of working from home and all of that. A lot of the big companies are relinquishing their leases, so they're moving into newer buildings, those ones that still have staff. But some of these beautiful old buildings that are scattered around the city, people are scratching their heads trying to find a use. I've been to Shanghai where you go to a vertical market, right? The market doesn't have to be in one big area.
Yeah,
it can be in an office building that you just convert with a big lift. Yeah. And you can have a variety of retail mixed places. Now, that should make the rent a bit cheaper for the operator. It keeps the old building alive rather than maybe it gets demolished into something else. And I think examples like that. I was involved with a discussion many years ago when MCG was going through the big Southern Stand refurbishment. And there was a plan put forward to put a supermarket in the MCG and cinemas and all of these things. It was in the press, and it just gets knocked on the head because of some local residents, right? So then we build docklands, and we haven't quite got that right. We keep adding things and taking things away, and not quite understanding what the master plan should be. But all these public facilities should be better utilised. Because to build a stadium that only houses 20 games a year, 30 games a year, whatever it is, funded by the taxpayer, I might add, is not a good idea, right? So we need to find more multiple uses of all these spaces. I had an idea with the homeless, which I presented to council, but it wasn't really understood, I think. If we give them a sense of purpose, why can't they have a day at the gallery, right, and put on a barbecue for them? Why can't we get them in the MCG once a week and put on a barbecue and put the screen on and just let them get a feel for being on the hallowed turf of the MCG? It's pretty low key.
It is.
There'll be sponsors for that sort of thing, and it just keeps the community going at another level.
But I think on that, what you just mentioned, George, is always coming down to the smaller things. It doesn't have to be massive, international flying cars and things like that. It can actually just be something which then leads to a conversation, leads to reputation, leads to loyalty, leads to memorability. Yeah. All these things are small scale. They're not for the limited. They're for everyone.
Yeah.
So I almost want to just create a little headline for your conversation today, and what it meant to me was it's a very simple idea, but give Melbourne back to the people. There's many dimensions to that, but I kind of feel like it's been taken out of the area of what people would normally do, and what normal people would do, people with common sense and so forth. Give Melbourne back to the people, whoever those people may be, and that might be, back to your very first point, was Melbourne is about the people. Let's give it back to the people. So we're drawing towards the end, and Richard has this little regular question that he's going to fire off at you. Richard, the final question
before
of the
day. I do that, I'd also add to what you just said before about the people. To the people is the heart. It's the passion. It's the sense of community. It's what makes things real. I think that's an incredibly important point. We don't seem to have that We have headlines, but we might have lost that bit. Okay, so going back to that question, George, probably a bit interesting for you because you're not the atypical type of person we've met, because they usually have gone and achieved something in a business line or something like that. But the question I always like to think, and I ask this myself, is what would you whisper in the ear of your younger self if you're standing here now where you are today and what you've learnt, and what could that answer be that might inspire a younger person, someone starting out in business, someone starting someone doing something with their life? What could they learn from that, from your experience and your wisdom?
No pressure.
Yeah, good question. I think I've got to try and detach it a bit from my personal situation. Look, as you go through owning multiple businesses and employing a lot of people, the richness of what you look back on, again, is the people and the relationships. But the hard truth about being a business owner for so long is saving, putting your money away, making it work for you, because small business owners have really just become wage earners, right? And a lot of them don't even lock away any superannuation. They just draw a bit of money out of the account as they need it just to get by. So that's another thing I think we need to fix, right? We keep looking at the mental health of workers, but think of the mental health of small business owners with the pressures they have, the loan borrowings, the fact that their house is under mortgage nearly the whole time through their whole working career. So that would be one thing, because I've seen people suffer through this, where they've had a 30, 40, 50-year career in a small business and they've got nothing to answer for at the end. And I think the focus on family is really another uniting thing that I think Melbourne has stood for, through family business, through, I've seen a lot of people in their work and social life, and the big connector has been that they're part of a family, an extended family. It's part of how the immigrants have sort of built this country. And I think if we veer away too far from that, then we just have a lot of people with a variety of interests just fighting for their patch, and it gets us nowhere.
Well, I think on behalf of Richard and myself, I'd like to thank you, George, for your sharing of ideas. It's very comforting to know we have people like you in Melbourne that, despite everything, you never give up. You got the passion. You've done many things in your life, and your energy level is still there, and you're doing all these good things that nobody really knows. You're not a particularly high-profile person, but thank God we have lots of Georges in Melbourne. And thanks again for being our guest today. And you've been on Brandr.
Thanks, George.
Thank you for the opportunity.